show.
Welcome to episode 74 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. This episode is juicy, everybody, because we are going to be touching on one of the hottest topics of the summer. After the Ottawa Senators had a huge summer picking up Alex DeBrincat and Claude Giroux and loading up that top six, people on social media have been debating who has the better top six, the Ottawa Senators or the Toronto Maple Leafs. We are going to dive into that. I promise you do not want to miss this conversation. We're going to talk about Nick Suzuki being named the 31st captain in the history of the Montreal Canadiens. And we're going to get into some other stuff as well. So I promise you want to stay tuned till the very end. But before we get into all that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Anthony Bruno. You seem extra fired up today. I think you're pretty pumped for these topics we're gonna go off on this show. You mentioned it, episode 74, and I hate doing this. I really hate doing this when this happens. No player in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs has ever donned the number 74, but I will make a shout out, and there is a Leaf connection. So I will give a shout out to Theo Fleury. And everyone's saying, wait a second, Fleury wore 14. But in the 2002 Olympics for Team Canada, Fleury rocked the number 74, one of my all-time favorite players, donned the number. And the reason he wore number 74 instead of 14 was because Brendan Shanahan was wearing 14. So there's your Leafs connection. And there's your trivia question of the day. Which number did Theo Fleury wear in the 2002 Winter Olympics?
Love it, Lepore. I would have thought for sure you were going to find someone who wore 74 in Leafs history, but
not a good one.
We'll move on to 75.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm not even sure there's someone who wore 75, but
yeah, the 70s, I think we're going through a lull, so it's not looking so good.
All right, man, let's get right into this episode. So like I said off the top of the show, I feel like people have been debating this all summer.
Fired up, I can tell. Fired up.
People have been debating this all summer because you have Senators fans who are now anointing this team as having the best top six in the NHL. Maybe not the best top six, but Senators fans are like, we have one of the top 3 to 5, top 6 forward groups in the league. We're an absolute juggernaut up front. We're going to score 1 million goals. But when you actually break it down, I'm not sure that is the case. Oh. So Lepore, I will throw it to you first. Which team has the better top 6 forward group, the Leafs or the Senators?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. You're putting me on the spot. I think this topic's pretty hilarious because this is one of those ones that you look at and say, okay, like let's step back for a second. Okay. Ask 100 Leaf fans who has the better top 6 on social media, and you will get 100 answers that are the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now ask 100 Senators fans who is the better top 6, and they will say the Ottawa Senators. And it's the perfect example of how we're completely stupid as sports fans and how our biases come into play when creating an opinion. And I think at the end of the day, there's no real definitive answer to the question. And I hate to do that. And I can tell you have a definitive answer to the question, but I look at it and say, okay, you look at the Sens top 6. Is it better than the Leafs top 6? I think if we argued who are the 5th and 6th best players within the top 6s, the Ottawa Senators would have the edge. Their 5 and 6 are better than our 5 and 6. But then if you go to the Leafs side and say, okay, well, who has the better players? The 2 best players out of the 6 are Matthews and Marner. So take a pick at what you want. If you want more balance, or if you want like 2 elite superstar players at the top. But either way, I just find it funny how this discussion is taking place, because I go to both ends. Like if you're, and I'll even say it, if you're a Leaf fan arguing for the Leafs, well, if the Sens had, if you took out the Sens' 2 best forwards and added Matthews and Marner, like they'd be like a contender. If you took Kerfoot and bunting out of the Leafs and adding whoever you wanted to say are the 5th and 6th best forwards for the Ottawa Senators, the Leafs would go 82-0. So it's like this funny hypothetical that at the end of the day we're talking about. But like I said, you seem pretty pumped up about this from the start. So I'm going to let you go. And I stayed pretty neutral on this one. And I know I always hate to do that. You seem pretty pumped up. Let's see if you can convince me one way or the other. I have a feeling you're going to go a certain way, Bruno. I don't know. Something's telling me you're going to go a certain way.
Lepore, there is a definitive answer.
Let's go.
There is absolutely a definitive answer in this debate between which team has the better top 6, the Leafs or the Senators. Allow me, GFP Nation, to break this down. So I did a lot of research on this last night, okay? And I looked at several different things. So first of all, let's lay out who the top 6 forwards actually are for both of these teams. And I'm sure if you listen to this podcast, you probably know. But just to, set the foundation of this debate. So for the Leafs, we're looking at Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Bunting, and Kerfoot. And for the Senators, we're looking at Tim Stützle, Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, Brady Tkachuk, Alex DeBrincat, and Claude Giroux. Okay, so just to set the table for that. So I broke this down in 6 different ways.
6 different ways. Oh, it's only an hour show, eh, Bruno?
So first I looked at amount of 30-goal seasons among all the top 6 forwards. I looked at the amount of point per game seasons among all these top 6 forwards. First and second team all-star selections.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to look at all-star selections, and I could have done that, but first and second team all-star selections just shows, have you had an elite season? Yes or no? Because if you're a first or second team all-star, that means that you have had an elite season in the NHL. I looked at combined salary and then combined points and goals from last season. Okay.
Salary's a good topic. And it's actually funny. I'll step in for a second. Yep. Everyone chirping the Leafs all these years about their forwards making all the money. We're kind of seeing this trend in the NHL now. Like someone pointed out, what was it? It's like Tkachuk, Stützle, and Norris make more than Matthews, Marner, Nylander. It was like about the same or whatever it was. But newsflash, everyone, like it wasn't as bad as everyone made it out to be.
Oh yeah, wait until I compare these salaries, Lepore. People are gonna be very surprised. So first, let's start with 30-goal seasons. So I'm sure if you were to guess, you would probably say the Leafs, right? Have more 30-goal seasons.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So the Leafs have 14 30-goal seasons within their top 6 to 6 for the Ottawa Senators. You know what surprised me the most, Lepore? Giroux has one 30-goal season in his NHL career.
Really? Okay.
He's only hit 30 goals once in his NHL career. So you could say like, oh, you're looking at all the Matthews seasons and Tavares. Well, Claude Giroux has been in the league basically just as long as John Tavares has. He's older than John Tavares. One 30-goal season. So the Leafs have them there, 14-6. Point per game seasons. The Leafs, 13. The Ottawa Senators, 6 within their top 6. 13-6. Another big discrepancy. And again, I like point per game seasons because to me that shows your, how elite you are as well. And I know there's different aspects to how elite a player is. Are they a 200-foot player? Can they do more than just score and produce? But when you hit that point per game threshold, there really aren't a lot of guys who do that consistently. But again, if we're looking at these 2 top 6 forward groups, the Leafs have 13 point per game seasons to Ottawa's 6. First and second team all-star selections, the Leafs have 5. The Senators have 1. That 1 being Giroux.
Yeah, that 1 year everyone thought he was better than Crosby. Remember that?
Yeah, exactly. I believe he was I want to say he was top 5 in MVP voting, may have finished top 3 that year.
Yeah, I remember he was leading the scoring race throughout that 1 year in Philadelphia for quite a while.
But, and obviously the first and second team all-star selections from the Leafs, mostly coming from Matthews and Marner, and John Tavares also has 1 in his career. Now let's look at, actually, I'll end on the salary, okay? Combined points from last season, because you could say, the Senators are still younger, like it's not necessarily fair, but to that point, Lepore, I would say Brady Tkachuk is entering his 5th season in the NHL. Matthews and Marner are entering their 7th season. So it's not like, Tkachuk just entered the league yesterday. He's been around now for 4 years. Same with some of these other guys. And I know, for example, like Norris, a little bit of a late bloomer. Like Batherson, he looks really good, but he doesn't have a lot of years under his belt.
Injuries too.
But, DeBrincat's been in the league now 5 years. So, it's not crazy to look at these numbers and you can't just say, oh, the Leafs they have way more years under their belt. This isn't fair. Not necessarily. So looking at points from last season, Leafs in their top 6, 473 to Ottawa's 367.
Okay.
Almost 100-point difference. Goals, Leafs 192 to the Senators 166. That was actually closer than I thought it would be. But shout out to Alex DeBrincat, who had another 40-goal season last year. Yeah. And then Lepore. This is one of the most surprising stats. It's the combined salaries of the top 6 forwards. So the Leafs coming in at a shade under $45 million. So $44,955,000. The Senators, okay, this year specifically, coming in at a shade under $35 million. So there's a $10 million difference this season. But Lepore, when that Tim Stützle contract kicks in next season, the Senators' top 6 forward group is coming in at $42,380,000, just a couple million less than the Leafs. So everyone who loves to make fun of the Leafs and say they spend all this money on their forward group, next year the Senators are essentially going to have the exact same money, less $2 million committed to their top 6 forwards. So I throw this back to you, Lepore, thinking about that now in terms of the amount of money that both of these top 6 forward groups are making. And again, things could change next season. Guys could get traded. Yeah. Who knows, right? But which top 6 forward group would you rather have after hearing all that?
I think, and again, I think this whole argument's kind of loaded and hilarious. I think right now, I think if everyone went on the truth serum, I think right now everybody would say the Leafs because of all those points you made. But I could hear Sens fans in my head as you were making those comments, like the goals, the points, that stuff, saying, well, Batherson got hurt last year, so he missed a ton of games. That really affects those numbers. And then there's the issue of going forward, what is the ceiling of the top 6 versus the ceiling of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Because if you look at the Leafs, let's face it. So you mentioned salary for next year. The Leafs most likely will not have Michael Bunting next year. He's going to sign with the Edmonton Oilers for 5 times 5, exactly. as we all know. So Bunting will probably be gone. And then you look to the other side with the Sens. I mean, this is the top 6. I mean, DeBrincat has to be signed, but I don't think they would have traded the 7th overall pick to get him if they didn't think they could lock him down and have some awareness to the fact that he would possibly want to extend in Ottawa. And there's the whole issue of ceiling. What is the ceiling of these guys? And I'll ask you, Bruno, who would you say, and not necessarily ceiling, because one player is in his prime, is Stützle's ceiling higher than what Nylander is right now? I think that's where this debate kind of comes in, because Matthews and Marner are again, people go crazy, but Matthews is a once in a lifetime talent. There's always that thing that we don't realize what something is while it's happening until we look back at it. Matthews had one of the best goal scoring seasons last year ever. And Mitch Marner is a back-to-back first-team All-Star. Even that, let's look up the list of guys who have been back-to-back first-team All-Stars. I'm just all Hall of Famers. So, you have that. But then on the Sens side, it's okay, well, what are the ceiling of these guys? They're all locked up. Matthews only has 2 years left on his deal. Your point, too, you made about the contracts. Well, where are we going to be in 2 years? And then where are we going to be in 3 years? You put in perspective, let's say Marner re-signs with the Leafs. When he re-signs for who knows, whatever he would re-sign at, Stützle's got 5 years left at that number. Josh Norris has 5 years left. I guess Tkachuk will have 4 years left. So again, I hate to be neutral, but it's that whole thing with sports where pick your side. But I think if we're specifically looking at right now, you'd say the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'll throw a different pitch out there. there's the argument of like the better players carrying teams. The better players are the ones making the differences. Like even like look at the Oilers. If we threw the Oilers into this mix, if someone looked at me and said the Edmonton Oilers have a better top six than both of these teams, I'd be like, I mean, you got McDavid and Draisaitl. There's a take. I'd probably disagree, but it's not bonkers to think, you know what? If I get McDavid, I just want that top six.
Yeah,
if I get
you could
McDavid,
argue that they do have a better top six than both teams. You can
yeah,
make the
100%.
argument for sure.
100%. So, I mean, take your pick of what you want. There's the term. I'm sure Sens fans are very excited because these guys are locked up. They've shown commitment, and that's a great thing for the team. But it's going to be a great story how these deals work out because everyone was so quick to pick on the Leafs, giving these guys what they gave them right out of their entry-level deals. See, those are the numbers I thought you were going to bring out. Because remember, someone brought this up. They brought up all these Norris's numbers, Stutzla's numbers, Kachuk's numbers when they signed their extensions, how many games played and how many points. And then they compared it to Marner, Matthews, and Nylander. And like, it wasn't even close. Like Marner was, what was it, a 94-point season he got in his third year? Matthews essentially hit 40 goals for the first 3 years of his career. But didn't he get he got robbed of a 50-goal season because of injuries? So what would those guys have gotten if they were putting up numbers like that? So it's going to be really interesting to see those deals and how they work out. If they all work out, and I'm not going to say like none of them will work out because I think they're all really good players with a high ceiling, or if some of them do, some of them don't. But the interesting, like the Sens will be interesting to look at in like 3-4 years because I think it could be one of those cases. And comment down below, Sens fans, like what you think about this one. I think could be one of those cases in 3 or 4 years. It could be like this team is set and these salaries are a joke, and I can't believe these salaries spread over this many guys. Or all it takes is 1 or 2 to be bad. To be like, wow, that guy's overpaid by that 2-3 million, and that's a hit, and that sucks, right? So it's a loaded question. There's so many angles.
It really is. You can look at it from so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, let's have the discussion again in 2 years when Nylander and Matthews are up. And hopefully it still is a discussion for Leafs fans everywhere. But it's a good one. It's a fun one. Yeah, heck, if you want comments on Twitter right now, just post that question, top 6 Ottawa versus top 6 Toronto. And you're going to get lots of passionate responses. But at the end of the day, man, like this is all good stuff because I think it shows, I'm not going to say the Battle of Ontario is back. Like I went through high school and university with those wars in the playoffs, and it was craziness in the city, and that was before social media. So I've said now, with everyone's access, everyone dialing in, I may have to leave town or even furthermore leave the country being a Leafs fan in Ottawa, because like the stuff you hear, the stuff you see, people's behavior, it brings out the worst in people. It really does. So on that end, it's something that can be kind of cringy, but at the same time, it's good, man. It's exciting for teams to hate each other and for fans to look forward to those matchups. And I mean, like I go to the Leafs games here in Ottawa, and I'll say it, the last few years, it's been blue. It's been a total washout. Maybe Sens fans will show up now and we'll get more of a 50-50 and the passion will be there. So it's great. It's a great thing.
It's time for a quick break to let you know that today's episode comes from True Classic. Our brand new sponsor has the absolute best fitting t-shirts a man can buy. Just take a look. This thing looks amazing. Finding the right t-shirt, no matter what body type you have, can be incredibly frustrating. Most t-shirts are either way too tight on your gut or look way too big and boxy. It's time to upgrade with a t-shirt that's right for you. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men finally get a better fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they have to offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the code GFP at trueclassic.com. Lepore, I love these t-shirts, man.
These t-shirts are incredible. Gentlemen, there are a few things in your life that you should take very seriously. Your finances, your car, your shoes, your significant other. But what should also be on that list is your t-shirts. Don't be a total schleb and wear a t-shirt that's too big with boxy arms and you look like a total joke. Have some self-respect. Go to the True Classic Tees website, put in GFP for 25% off.
The t-shirts are awesome. They also have the hat. You see Lepore is wearing it. Look at this
rocking
hat.
this hat. Look at that hat. It's like plus 35 out. This hat is perfect with the mesh back.
Great quality hat. You can wear it forwards or backwards. I love it, man. I love it. True classic. Shout out to you guys. Love these t-shirts. They fit so good. I love when they fit nice and snug around the arms, but they're not too tight around your midsection. Just so good. It's about time you learn how to dress properly, guys. Upgrade your wardrobe right now with True Classic. Get 25% off at trueclassic.com with the code GFP. Free shipping is included on purchases over $100. 100% risk-free guarantee with a 30-day return policy. Stay classy with True Classic. Manscaped wants to let you know that smooth sack summer is slowly coming to an end, fellas. If you haven't been scaping for the summer sun, it's not too late, because as summer comes to an end and we enter fall, keep your boys clean and fresh just in time for Fresh Ball Fall. The leader in below the waist grooming is here to make sure you feel smoother than a beach ball and smell fresher than your girl's pumpkin spice latte. Start the new season the right way and join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer just for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping using the code GFP20 at manscaped.com. Lepore, it doesn't matter what product you use from Manscaped. They're just all amazing.
Oh, sorry, Bruno. I was in the middle of something.
Lepore, what's going on there?
Yes, you. The guy who uses the same razor on his face that he uses on his balls. Don't do that. Don't be gross. Have some self-respect. Go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Get yourself a lawnmower 4.0 so you won't have to put that disgusting blade that touches your balls on your face ever again.
You said it, Lepore. Whether it's the lawnmower 4.0, the nose trimmer, the body wash and shampoo, these products will take your game to the next level.
Yeah,
I'm
a
telling
body
you
wash
right now,
doesn't
fellas.
smell like pine salt.
You will not go wrong investing in some Manscaped products. So once again, go to manscaped.com and use the code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping using the code GFP20 at manscaped.com. Keep things smooth and fresh as we say sayonara to smooth ball summer and enter fresh ball fall. The rivalry is definitely back, and it's going to take the Senators to actually show some progression here and make the playoffs, or at least sniff a playoff spot. But the rivalry, I think, is definitely starting to creep back. Before we move on from this topic, Lepore, there's one other thing I wanted to mention. I also ranked all the forwards in the top 6, 1 to 12 from both teams. And I'll just go through it quickly.
Okay.
So I have Matthews and Marner number 1 and 2.
Based
Obviously.
on what? Like you ranked like
So
how?
I ranked this based on right now with a mix of upside, but more right now.
So like personal opinion. This is your personal opinion.
Yeah,
of, the
of
top
who
12.
I like. If I was building a top 6 from both of these teams, and not, it's not really positional
Right.
dependent. It's basically just like, who do I think are the 6 best players? So I have Matthews and Marner number 1 and 2. I have DeBrincat ranked 3rd.
Okay. Really? Okay.
2-time 40-goal scorer. I believe I said
Fair
this
enough.
on a previous show. I'd have to look up the stat again, but he has like the 7th most goals in the NHL since he entered the league.
Mhm.
He's number 7 or 8 since his rookie season. So, I mean, he's one of the best goal scorers in the world. I have William Nylander at 4.
So right now you have Nylander ahead of Stützle.
Yeah. So right now I do have Nylander. And listen, Nylander's coming off a 34-goal, 80-point season last year.
I know.
And he was good in the playoffs too. People love to think that William Nylander's like, it's just it's William Nylander. He's good, but he's not that good. This dude had 80 points last year.
You see that list? I don't know who does it, NHL.com. Somebody that list of like best wingers in the NHL. And like he wasn't even in the top like 30 or something.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It's
William
weird, man.
Nylander would have led the Senators in scoring last year by 13 points. So put that in perspective, because Brady Tkachuk was the Sens' leading scorer with 67 points last year. So think about that for a second. Anyway, I have Brady Tkachuk number 5, and that's based on just like total package.
Yeah.
Scored 30 goals last year. Love his physicality. Love everything he brings.
So I have him at number 5, and number 6, I have John Tavares. And you could laugh at that all you want, but he also would have been the Senators' leading scorer last season by about 10 points. So that would be my top 6. And then right after that, I have 4 Senators in a row. I have Norris, Stützle, Batherson, and Giroux. Next 4. And then the last 2 are Bunting and Kerfoot. Obviously.
You've Giroux that low.
I have Giroux that low. The more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, he's getting older now. He's like 34 years old. He has one 30-goal season. And if you go back even over some of his recent years, and I know he looked pretty good with Florida last year, but he hasn't been that great, Claude Giroux. Like, he's not a great goal scorer. He's more of a setup man. And again, I'm sure he's going to flourish playing with some of these forwards here in Ottawa, but I couldn't put him ahead of Batherson, who I just think obviously has more upside because he's younger. And I would just say he's probably better than Claude Giroux at this point. Maybe that's a little bit of a hot take. And then Tim Stützle with the upside as well. And Josh Norris is coming off a 35-goal season.
Yeah.
Norris upside as well, right? So that's why I have those 3 guys ranked above Claude Giroux. No disrespect to him. I think he's a good player, but that's where I have him ranked on my list.
Yeah. See, Norris is probably the most interesting one to me. Because as you mentioned, I have it here. He scored 35 goals in 66 games last year. Like, that's crazy good. It's really crazy good. But then, like, if you dissect it a bit, he only had 20 assists. So in 66 games, he had 55 points. And how many of those assists were just garbage power play assists based on the type of player he is? And it's not an insult to him. It's just the style he plays. I think he's a great player. But there was also some numbers coming out. I remember people saying, and there's one for Stützle as well, that there's a lot of power play there, that they were heavy on power play points. Like, I think Stützle, it was something crazy. And comment, I'm looking at the exact number right. It was something like he had like 3 even strength points in his last 20 or 30 games of the regular season last year. Like, I think he had like 25 points in 27 games or something.
Yeah, Lepore, 26 of his 58 points came on the power play.
Okay. Well, there you go. But with Norris too, one thing that's been talked about, and even with Sens fans, like when he got that deal, was his shooting percentage doesn't make sense right now. Like, his career shooting percentage is like literally one of the best of all time. So people expect that to regress, as like it does, because it's math. So Norris is an interesting one to me to see like how this year goes for him, how many goals he can score if he can stay healthy, finish a season, and where that shooting percentage goes to. And then again, it'll be fun to watch Stützle and him and see how they do 5-on-5. I think Tkachuk too. I think Tkachuk may be heavy power play as well. I mean, a lot of high scoring guys in the NHL are. I'm just saying, like, when you talk about the best players, they're putting up big numbers 5-on-5.
Yeah, Tkachuk's power play numbers aren't as good as Stützle and Norris. Like, Tkachuk has 50 even strength points, 17 on the power play.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, whereas like Stützle and Norris, almost half of their points, a little bit under half of their points came on the power play last season.
How many of Norris's goals were on the power play? Do you have that in front of you?
Norris had 16 power play goals, so 16 of his 35 were on the power play.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. Just again,
it's great. It's like if you're good on the power play, it's like McDavid and Draisaitl, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it also gives you a look into like, okay, how good is this player when things are even, when things are at 5-on-5?
Yeah,
that's where Matthews and Marner excel more than pretty much anybody in the league.
Yeah, what I want to, the way I always look at the power play thing is like, okay, power play points are great, but what is the increase of power play points that you're actually getting from that player? Because I always laugh at when people measure up power plays. Typically, the worst power play in the league runs about 15%. The best power play is about 25. So then an average would be around 20. So you put it in perspective. If the best power play in the league gets 20 attempts, they will score 5 of them. An average power play will score 4, and a bad power play will score 3. Like, there's not that much of a gap. So that's when you see, okay, like the teams like I'll point to Draisaitl and McDavid, where, okay, they're getting a ton of power play points, but if you look, their power play is at the top their power play is almost at the top every year. So there's actually like a significant increase of goals being scored on the power play because of them, where in some cases those guys getting a lot of power play points, but not necessarily because they're really good and doing whatever. It's just because they're on the power play. And like I said, in 20 attempts, the worst power play in the league only scores one less goal than an average power play. So just the fact of being on the power play, you're going to get points.
Yeah,
so
it'd be interesting to look at like secondary power play assists.
You know what, man? I have said forever, like we dissect these guys like crazy. XG percentage, 5-on-5 shooting, whatever. Ever since I was a kid, I was like, why is primary assist not a more dominant stat? Secondary assist, something to look at. And like what you said, I'm like, how has it not been like an identifier? Second assists on the power play. Like I've always wondered that. Like, why is that one of those things? So and so got 80 points, but he had 30, as an example, like 20 or 30 second assists on the power play. So they're kind of meaningless. Like anyone would have sent the puck to the point before it got
like
shot.
any almost like average offensive player could have
Exactly.
done that,
So
right?
I've always been shocked at that. Like, why is that not more pointed to?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, when you look at it like that, Lepore, I rank them. And listen, if you're listening to this podcast, watching on YouTube, please rank them, because I would love to hear the rankings of our community here. Like, how would you rank if you were looking at the 12 forwards in the Leafs and Senators top 6? Rank them 1 to 12, or even just rank them 1 to 6. So just to reiterate, I have it Matthews, Marner, DeBrincat, Nylander, Tkachuk, and Tavares. So I have 4 Leafs in that top 6 and 2 Senators, being Alex DeBrincat and Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah.
So
you're gonna see like man, guys, comment down below with your top 12. And I'll say it, on both ends of the spectrum, we're gonna see some really bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna see some Sens fans with some bad ones. We're gonna see some Leafs fans with some bad ones. So I'm excited to see them. I usually avoid the comments for my sanity, but I may have to dive into this one.
Yeah, please let us know, because this is going to be really good. I already know. All right, Lepore, let's move on now to the next topic on today's podcast. Big news in Montreal. Nick Suzuki recently named the 31st captain in the history of the Montreal Canadiens. When you look at this roster, Lepore, you go down the list and you're trying to think like, who else could have been named captain here? I think they made the right choice here with Suzuki. They gave him a big contract. He was great in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Coming off, a 60-point season, 61 points, whatever he had. I still think it was slightly disappointing based on, the expectations for this guy. But what do you think, Lepore? Did the Habs make the right choice naming Suzuki their 31st captain?
When I initially saw the tweet come out from Friedman that they had announced Suzuki as captain, I was kind of shocked, and like not in a negative way, like, oh, like why'd they do that? But my initial reaction was kind of, what was the hurry? It's kind of how I felt on it. Like, why not one more year? This team's kind of going through a rebuild right now. We'll see how things go, and then we'll name him captain. But the more I thought about it, this kid, he committed for 8 years. He's going to be a significant piece of this franchise for a long time. It shouldn't matter, but it does. He's a Canadian kid. And there's that whole thing of, we don't really truly know these players' personalities and what they bring from an emotional standpoint. So who knows this guy's DNA in the locker room and his personality and how he rubs off on people, and if he's a good example for other players. So I have trust in the Montreal Canadiens brass that they have a full and heavy understanding of the type of person, the type of human Nick Suzuki is, and then he can handle this. Because then that's another aspect of it too. Like, let's face it, being the captain of the Montreal Canadiens is a big deal. Like, if we made the list of, I almost said the worst things to be in pro sports, it'd be like, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, whatever, anything on the Leafs. And like, I think people said like goalie in Montreal is probably one of the hardest. But man, like, captain of Montreal is a big deal, and you have to be a certain type of person to be able to handle it. And I've often thought it'd be funny to poll players around the league. Say you play for the St. Louis Blues. Would you want to be captain? I think most players would say yes. I don't think many guys would turn it down. But then pose that same question to the Leafs or Canadiens. if a lot of guys are like,
there'll be some hesitation.
If I want nothing to do with that, I wouldn't be surprised. So I assume that conversation was had with him, that he would be honored to be captain and he would look forward to being captain. And when he gave his interview the other day, he said all the right things. He was poised. He was asked if he plans on learning French, and he said that he's already in the process of doing that. So, I mean, he got on the fans' good side with that. So, all in all, like, I think it's cool. I mean, they could have went a different route. I mean, I guess what other choice they have? Either like not name a captain, like keep waiting. And then if you look at the vets, it's like, okay, well, who really would they have named? Like Gallagher? You know what I mean? Like I kind of thought a couple of years ago that Gallagher may end up wearing the C at some point for Montreal, but the way his contract currently works and the way the team is going forward, or at least how they appear to be going forward, I'm sure they're probably going to try to get rid of him, as much as that sucks because he's been a piece of Montreal for a long time. So I think that's kind of vanished. But all in all, like, I like the player. I think it's cool. I think he said all the right things, and I have trust in the Canadiens brass that they named the right guy.
And one thing we should also mention, he's the youngest captain in Habs history at 23 years old, which is pretty interesting.
Even for the league, I think he's like bottom 5 in terms of age. Someone posted that.
Yeah, when you go down the list and you look at some of the other vets on this team, like as much as I like Brendan Gallagher, heart and soul guy, grit, like really Brendan Gallagher as the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, he had a bad season last year. Nothing was going in for that guy, and I'm sure he's going to bounce back. But couldn't see him as captain. He is an alternate captain along with Joel Edmondson. You know, Shea Weber's not here anymore. And Shea Weber was just a fantastic player. Like that guy just embodies everything you want in a captain.
100%.
Carey Price, we don't know if we're ever going to see him play a game again, but are we going to get into a situation where he's going to be the captain? It's like the Roberto Luongo situation in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So when you go down the list, you know, there weren't really that many options. Like Cole Caulfield, I don't think is quite ready to be the captain. He doesn't strike me as being captain material. And I should mention a quote from Brendan Gallagher on Nick Suzuki. He said, he's the heartbeat of our team. So I trust Brendan Gallagher. All right. He said that Suzuki's the heartbeat of the team. I'm sure at a very young age, he has shown, you know, really good leadership qualities. He's been really good in the playoffs for Montreal, especially the year that they went to the Stanley Cup final and knocked out the Toronto Maple Leafs. Suzuki was excellent in the playoffs. I still want to see a little bit more from him production-wise in the regular season. Like, I want to see him become a point-per-game player at some point. He's not there yet, but I'm sure he will get there. Who knows? The jury's still out on that. So you go down the list of this Habs team, and there's really not that many options. So I do think that they made the right choice naming Nick Suzuki their next captain.
What's your take on this whole trend? And it's happened for a while now, just compared to how we grew up and what we thought a captain was, of these kids being named captain. It seems like now it's moved from that grizzly vet captain guy to just the best young player on the team. And like, I remember, and to think about how weird it is, I remember when Sid was named captain in Pittsburgh, people lost their minds. That how can he be captain? He's young. What has he done? How can he lead a room? Now, if that decision was made, it would totally be expected. Like, people expected Auston Matthews to be named captain. People were just waiting for McDavid to be named captain. Even Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa, everyone knew, like, hey, Tkachuk's going to be the captain. So I don't know. I think there's arguments for both sides. And I've also heard the take that wearing the C doesn't mean what it used to. It's more of like the PR move and all that stuff that like teams go for with like the most popular player, kind of like an Ovechkin type thing. Like, it was kind of funny early in his career. It kind of got delayed with Ovechkin a bit, and it was, you knew it was a matter of time. But I don't know. Take your pick on what you want. Like, I'm old school. I'd still rather have, kind of like you touched on, like the Shea Weber, and Shea Weber's a really good player, but I'd rather have the Shea Weber than just like the best young player, as an example. Because even too, and comment down below what you think about this one, but it takes pressure off that young player. You know what I mean? Or is that a discussion? Does John Tavares wearing the C take pressure off of Auston Matthews? Just like a few less questions to answer afterwards. And because Tavares is older, he can handle it better. I don't know. It really is an interesting discussion with regard to like who wears the C, especially in the big markets, as I touched on earlier.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because you go down the list, Lepore. There have been a lot of guys who've been named captain at a young age. Like you look at Crosby, Jonathan Taves,
Taves, yeah.
Connor McDavid. You know, there's probably some guys that I'm missing here, but you know, I feel like it's almost kind of like 50-50 throughout the NHL. Either you have that young stud as your captain, like the next superstar on your team, or you have like, you know, the grizzled vet.
Yeah.
And you know, not saying that like John Tavares is a grizzled vet, like he's still like a really good player, but you know, obviously if you ask Leafs Nation, I would say that probably 50% would say that Matthews deserves the C over John Tavares.
Yeah. But again, see how it works. Like if you ask them, like I agree with you, you'd probably get that answer. But what are they basing that answer on? The play on the ice. Well, the play on the ice is not about leadership or personality or being an example.
You're right, 100%.
Right. So I don't know. Like I'd like to know who's probably the oldest captain in the league. I guess Bergeron. It's gotta be Bergeron.
Yeah, Bergeron is definitely up there. I'd have to look that up, but he's got to be up there because he's like 36 now.
Yeah, you can't get much better than that when it comes to a captain. To be fair,
like just a phenomenal captain. But yeah, you know what? I think the Habs made the right decision here. They're still in the middle of their rebuild, but we'll see how this goes. So that actually brings us into our last topic of the show today, Lepore. Looking at the Habs and their rebuild and who they have on their roster right now. You know, they just drafted Yuri Slafkovsky, Nick Suzuki, and Cole Caulfield leading the charge right now. And, you know, with a little bit of an eye towards the future here, which team would you rather be, Lepore? The Montreal Canadiens or the Ottawa Senators?
Ooh. Two cities only 2 hours apart. Let's talk about these two. My immediate answer is the Senators, just because they're further ahead. And we talked about that top six, and they're all locked up. Like people sometimes compare these teams, like who's got a better future and who's this and who's that. And I'll try my best to look at it and say, okay, well, where's one team at and where's the other team essentially trying to get to? And usually it's, well, where that team is right now. So if you look at the Sens top six, how these guys are locked up, if they can lock in DeBrincat, I mean, I don't want to go as far as say like you can't get much better than that. But in terms of a long-term thing, I wanted to go back and see sort of the history of NHL contracts, at least post-lockout, and when a team could look and say, you know what, we're going to be competitive for the next X amount of years. I remember seeing an interview, I think it was on when they did the HBO thing on the Capitals. And I forget who said it, but they were talking about Washington. And they gave out all those crazy contracts. Like it was Ovechkin, it was Green, it was Semin, it was Backstrom. And whoever it was said, I've guaranteed us competitiveness, at least for the next X amount of years. And I look at that Sens top six, and hockey's a funny sport. Teams get good and get bad in a hurry. But if you're looking at that Sens top six, and if they can sign DeBrincat, at the end of the day, I mean, they've essentially guaranteed competitiveness. Like that team will be fighting for a playoff spot, and most of those players aren't even in their prime yet. So I would say that, you know, really at the end of the day, like what bad could happen? Like how bad could it be? I don't think it could be that bad. So the fact that the Senators, in my opinion anyway, have that locked up for, you can say like the long-term future, really, if they do like get DeBrincat locked down. Like Drew's got his 3 years left, but I mean, again, like you said, he's getting older, and like where you ranked him in that top 12. But my take is the Sens, because I think if we looked at the Habs and their kids and where they could be in 5 years as a team, essentially they're trying to be, as far as the forwards go anyway, they're trying to be Ottawa. Like if we looked at the Montreal Canadiens best young players and said, okay, we asked Habs fans, where do you expect these guys to be in 3, 4, 5 years? There probably be comparables to those 6 guys on the Sens. So at the end of the day, well, I'd rather be the Sens if it is right now, because these guys are good, these guys are young, and these guys are locked up. So I think Pierre Dorion has done a great job of solidifying this team as a competitive team for the distant future. And you don't say that too often. I'm not going to go as far as say like I picture them as a contender, but they're going to be competitive. The Ottawa Senators, barring crazy health stuff, are not going to be bad for the next little while. So sticking to the hometown team, man, going the Ottawa Senators.
So I would absolutely rather be the Ottawa Senators at this point. And the one thing that I will point to is looking at the Habs cap sheet. It is not great. Like some
underrated,
of these contracts,
underrated bad, eh?
It's pretty bad, man. Brendan Gallagher is on the books for 5 more years at $6.5 million. Josh Anderson on the books for 5 more years at $5.5 million.
Yeah.
Carey Price is on the books for 4 more years at $10.5 million.
Holy shit.
Like, I know that they could, like, you know, put him on long-term injured reserve and all that stuff, but my goodness, like, you know, going down the list here. Okay, but Michael Matheson is now their highest paid defenseman, $4.875 million over the next 4 years. Not terrible. Who else here? Christian Dvorak, Lepore, 3 more years at a shade under $4.5 million. Like, you're paying a guy who's like Christian Dvorak. Okay, remember they picked him up last year in that trade. You know, they bring in a new centerman. They're like, this guy's going to be good. He lit it up with Marner, you know, in the OHL for the London Knights, and hopefully he can rediscover his offensive touch after, you know, he was kind of okay in Arizona. But now Christian Dvorak, I mean, is he a top 6 forward on a good team? I don't think he is.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And you're paying that guy a shade under $4.5 million for the next 3 years. So you go down their cap sheet, man, it's not great. And that's why I'd rather be Ottawa, because I'm guaranteed to be competitive, as you said, for at least, you know, you would think the next 5 years based on all the guys they have locked up in that top 6. And, you know, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with DeBrincat. But I just think Ottawa has better players. They have a better cap situation. The one silver lining for the Habs is that they could potentially get Connor Bedard. Now, they have to win the lottery. They have to be really bad this year. But that's the one silver lining. Like, if they're able to land Connor Bedard, that is a franchise-altering player.
Yeah,
like,
changes
we're talking
everything. Yeah.
McDavid, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon here. Like, this is a superstar-level player. So, but again, you can't be going to bed every night and being like, well, our entire future is based on landing Connor Bedard in the draft.
Yeah.
You know, they just got the number 1 pick and took Juraj Slafkovsky, who I think is going to be a good player, but I mean, he is nowhere near the superstar upside as Connor Bedard. I think most hockey fans would agree. So, yeah, right now, and with an eye on the future, I think it's easily the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I'm going to pump my tires a little bit. I remember a lot of people screaming at me when Josh Anderson signed that deal, because I said it was a shitty fucking signing. And everyone's like, oh, he's a good player. He scores goals, this and that. I said, yeah, he is a good player. He's an effective player. And he's the type of player I always say when he's on the ice, you have to keep your eye on him. But a 7-year deal was preposterous. And look at it now, man. Montreal would blast that into the sun if they could. And now here they are going through a rebuild and they have that on the book. Like, who's taking that one? The big thing with these guys and dumping these bad salaries is not typically the amount of money, it's the term. If Anderson had 2 years left, they could probably get rid of him, like find a taker. We don't know, even a bad team, you don't know where you're going to be in 5 years. You might be competitive. Well, you're not going to trade for Josh Anderson to get to the cap floor. Maybe if it, you know, in 3, 4, 5 years, we're trying to be competitive, we may still have this guy on the books. Yeah, it's a bad one, man.
Yeah, that, like you said, the Habs, very underrated, like terrible cap sheet right now. And there's things that they can do. There's moves that they can make. And I actually like what Kent Hughes has done so far since he's been running the Montreal Canadiens. But that team still has a lot of work to do, man. They got to sort some things out. Lepore, is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
Get off our chest. We spent the entire podcast talking about Toronto versus Montreal, Montreal versus Ottawa. I'm sure in the comments, a lot of people will be getting things off their chest based on their fandom. So, like I said, I usually try to avoid the comments at all costs just because it's a deep, dark, ugly place in social media, the comments. But for this one was pretty juicy. I may have to dial in and, read about how stupid people think we are.
Go down in that comment section, everybody. Tell us who has the better top six, the Leafs or the Senators. Rank them. I want to see it all. I want to see it all in the comment section.
I want to see the rankings.
All right, everybody. That is going to do it for episode 74 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Once again, if you are a new listener, or if you've been listening for a long time and you really enjoy the show, please give us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you enjoy the content, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. We are getting very close to the start of the NHL season. GFP is going to have you covered every step of the way. But until the next one, be good, everybody, and we will see you on episode number 75.
Thanks, everyone.